Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where gratitude is like a bottomless cup of coffee, always warm, always comforting, and something you just can't get enough of. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. When he asked the question, my heart almost stopped. We're going deep quick tonight, I thought. The weight of the moment just hung heavy. Whatever came next could redefine the way I see the world and success with it. This last week in Fiji, I spent some time with the smartest and most generous founders, leaders, and CEOs on the planet. Some of you definitely know, and others maybe not. Decamillionaires, billionaires, people who play at an absolutely stellar level. And it's not a one-time thing or a special event. We get together 3 times a year in some very cool places. This year, Fiji. You know, talk business, have fun, build relationships. It's incredibly valuable for the business and equally so personally. And 6 or 8 of us were having dinner next to the beach, you know, watching the sun go down, and the question came up. And it was, when I say the word successful, what does that mean to you? Now, how do you measure success? And this was a real lean-in moment, especially with the people that were around me at the table. And my first thought was, I don't want to go first. I mean, how dumb is that, right? You know, it's an answer that can't be scripted, and it's also one that we better know, because if we don't, why are we working? Why are we building a business anyway? Why do we do what we do? How do we know where we're headed if we don't know what success looks like? And so it was one of those questions that, there's a lot of value to it. And not only is there a lot of value to it, it's really a values question. What makes us feel successful? And some fantastic answers. One was about hitting a specific revenue level, and there was a story behind that, essentially proof, validation, battling some self-worth and some voices of the past. Anybody relate to that? A couple were around employee engagement, customer loyalty, sustainable growth, creating a solution that people love, multi-generational business. That was a great answer. Fulfillment, growth, contribution. There were some brilliant, well-articulated answers. And then it was my turn. And I wanted to just go, yeah, that, me too. It's a hard question that really should be easy. It was one of those things, part of all of the things that they had said. But for me, I just boil it down to 2 things. One was, I absolutely love my employees and clients. But first and foremost, I do this for family. Success to me is building a business in a way that gives me time with them every day to come to places like this and create experiences, coaching kids sports, being at school performances, not missing holidays and birthdays, and always taking summer vacations together. I mean, that's just no matter what. It's something that we always did, and huge. And that to me is success. And the second was really how well I've elevated other people, even if that means that they surpass me. And when I see team members grow, take on leadership roles, take on their own things, start their own companies, and achieve their dreams, sometimes going well beyond what I've accomplished. That is, I think, a great definition of success. I've lost count, somewhere in the teens, 15, 16 companies started by former employees. They've gone on to start things, and I think 8 or 9 exits, and some of those huge. But elevating others is not just in business. On the personal side, it's elevating kids who believe that their past or maybe their current circumstance dictates their future. And changing that, showing them a new, brighter, possible future, showing them what is possible. And they've done that in a number of different environments, some direct, some indirect. I'm only one person, but I can contribute and support a lot of other things to leverage that impact. So not starting my own thing, that's kind of dumb. There's so many great people doing great things, and I think that's really key, is finding people doing incredible things and then amplifying and elevating their efforts with financiers. So that's what I think of when I hear success. What about you? What does success mean to you? Send me an email, message me on LinkedIn, drop it in the comments below. Our expert guest last week was Greg Brooks, a partner at Search Tides, a hub for all things search, SEO, and the AI era of searching online. We talked about search. Does SEO still matter? And what is next in AI search? What's changing? What's going to be the same? And our founder last Tuesday was Dr. Paul Ashley. We talked about his SaaS journey, building anonymity, leadership versus followership, and the future of privacy and security online. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and check it out. My guest today is Rod Moynihan, seasoned leader, over 20 years experience in the SaaS and tech services, having successfully led and scaled businesses across Asia Pacific, Australia, and New Zealand, from early stage startups to mature growth companies. Now serving on multiple SaaS company boards, he is passionate about aligning all business functions to drive growth with a unique focus on harnessing the power of both people and technology to achieve top performance. Welcome someone who is a wealth of knowledge on strategic planning, execution, and the future of tech-driven business growth, Rod Moynihan. Hey Rod, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Great to be here, Jeff. Looking forward to our
Can you share with me a little bit about your journey? You've led multiple SaaS tech businesses. You've been at Zendesk, Microsoft, SAP, Salesforce, Accenture, Dataminr, quite a few. Pretty big in APAC, Australia, New Zealand. What are some key experiences there that have shaped your approach to leadership?
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, always interesting after 26 years to hear all those names replayed back to me. But happy to say that each one of those developed a great deal of experience for me, and also allowed me to make plenty of mistakes, and also allowed me to be in a position where allowed me to be in some of the future leadership positions that I was in. I think it's interesting to think about how you aggregate one or two key learnings out of all those experiences. But I think the common thread for me across all those organisations is probably two key things. I grew up in a tech time when we were transitioning out of on-prem. We came out of the .com explosion, and we were seeing a lot of transition in the way that organisations thought about selling their products and selling their services to the market. We also had, funnily enough, we talk about this as if it's something new. It was to me, but the internet all of a sudden became a sales ground. It wasn't just a place where you would have social interactions. It just wasn't a place where you would actually do a Google search. It actually became a core front end for the consumer experience with your brand, and also assessing what you sold. And so I think there's two things that I would say that I've learned through that period of time. The first is that organisations must have a digital presence. They must allow the buyer to be empowered at the digital front end to assess their products, and actually go deeper than just actually case studies and other things. And, hence we saw the expansion of SaaS coming in with offering up trials and free versions of their product. That's an example of a transition that I was part of. I think the second one is don't forget the human element. Humans still buy off humans, and humans still, depending on what markets you're in, particularly the B2B market, still want to actually engage with humans. And humans still now actually I believe humans today have to lift their capabilities of intellect and lift their capabilities of knowledge, because it's all at the fingertips of the clients as well, in their digital experience with you. So you've got to stay on top of that. Probably a third one, sorry, if I had a third, is organisations that focus on quality. And what I mean by quality is not just quality product, but quality people, quality engagements, and quality customer service and support with everything they do. And those brands you mentioned lived and breathed quality every day when it came to their interactions. Maybe your listeners might challenge some of those experiences with those brands, but that was my internal.
And they've made that transition as well in a lot of ways, from installed software to SaaS, and really embraced web technologies and continue to progress, which is pretty significant for companies that are pretty large. SAP, Microsoft, Salesforce kind of started the SaaS movement.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was one of the first heads of sales for Salesforce here in Australia, and I remember our journey of assisting customers in buying Salesforce, which at that point was just a single cloud. It was just
Right.
Sales Cloud. There wasn't the 152 other products they have today. But the interesting conversation that we were having then was not actually the traditional on-prem conversation, which would be how would this functionality support the growth of my business or support increased efficiency or productivity. Those conversations back then were about data security and hang on, I can't see a server under my desk or a flashing light in a room with an air conditioning unit. Like, what, you're going to take my data and put it in a data center in wherever it might be. And so our conversations were twofold back then. One was it was functionally it was not as rich as some of the CRM or sales tools that were available at the time, such as Siebel, but it actually came with a very, very interesting TCO and ROI model. But we spent most of our time convincing people that their data was secure and that they could move to a SaaS product. And there were plenty of what we called server huggers back there who just would not want to let go of their server banks because they felt they were more secure. But I do think that you're right to point out the SAPs and the Microsofts of the world, because in many ways they had to demonize their balance sheets to move from these perpetual on-prem software licenses that they had to actually moving it to the cloud and having a very, very different experience in how they sold, number one, and the sales motions, but number two, the optionality that then started to get presented to their customers to opt in and opt out more easily. So, yeah, but very, very interesting transitions for both of those. I was at SAP when they were making that transition, and yeah, that was a big one for them, because replicating also on-prem functionality into a cloud product is also a massive product development journey on its own right.
Fundamentally different in a go-to-market motion as well. What do you see? You've been in companies, big and small, or early stage, later stage. What are some core components of a successful go-to-market, and how do you make sure that that's executed effectively?
Yeah, so there's probably two type of go-to-market models we could kind of tease out here. Excuse me. Obviously, we have software companies that sell direct. And they have a direct relationship with the consumer. And then you have, actually it's probably three, sorry. You have the second one, which is an indirect model where it's 100% reseller-led or referral-led. And then you have the hybrid where you might have a reseller or a partner-led business that's originating opportunities in the market and coexisting with a software vendor that sells direct. I think the easiest one to probably think about is the direct one in terms of where the consumer has an end-to-end experience with just the vendor. And from that standpoint, if I think about my experiences in that, probably the most relevant one in the SaaS world would have been Zendesk. Now, Zendesk today has a partner network, but while I was there was no partner network. It was 100% direct business. Three things that I think in that direct model where there is no intermediary engagement between yourself and the end consumer is, number one, is you've got to have a very, very strong persona brand presence where your buyers are. So ensuring that the content and the knowledge that you're sharing in a digital sense or how you're targeting your personas is not just about product, but it's actually about their jobs and what they do in their jobs and ensuring they can see value, number one. Number two, you've got to have, as I said earlier on in this podcast, a very, very strong digital presence, allowing your buyers to self-orientate and self-assess, which effectively means that you're producing persona-based content, you're putting it in the channels where your buyers are, but you're always uplifting that with relevant information at all time. Because the needle has moved where the power sits now for buyer versus vendor or buyer versus seller. The buyer's got so much unseen movement assessing your product and your brand that you never see now, right? Unless they're actually hitting your webpage and you're tracking that, you're using all the smart digital tricks to understand who's coming, who's going, where they're spending time, and using that to prompt engagement. But I think the other one too is that is something that I think all organisations must think about, is the subscription model is an opt-in, opt-out model now. Now, whether or not someone's on a month-to-month or a year or a multi-year agreement, there will always be a point in time where they can opt out. right? And that is the mobility benefit of subscription software or subscription environments is you can opt in and opt out. You can take your data with you when you leave. So I think the third one is when you're a seller in that direct market is you own 100% of the client engagement. You own 100% of the client data points. Use that really well in your nurturing and your customer service and support to avoid churn and contraction and to ensure that you get stronger renewals. Just on that note, I used to hate the word renewal. I used to actually say it should be a rebirth, right? There should be an opportunity for us to kind of reinvigorate the customer, not just recontract them. And that should be an always on engagement, not just 90 days out from the contract expiration. I think when you move to the kind of hybrid model where you've got a reseller environment and a direct environment, that offers up some complexity. But I think there's some really good SaaS companies today that have really harnessed how to do that well. And I think empowerment and when I use the word empower, I mean build a business as a vendor that puts more effort in supporting your channel and support your channel, not just from a perspective of product information and product knowledge, but co-sell with them. Help them plan where to sell, because if you've got an army of resellers all kind of going after the one area, you're not actually going to get the value out of what you do. So have a very, very, very strong strategy around how you support your partners with where they sell and where they add value. But also go side by side with them, because they're another army of salespeople and sales knowledge in the market for you. And really, from a direct standpoint, challenge when you own something direct or when you farm that out through your channel, because you'd be surprised how often your channel partners have more industry or domain knowledge for a particular client engagement than you have as a direct vendor. And also your channel's usually where the rubber hits the road on implementation and bringing value to the platform. So they also can kind of help erode some of the risks that the clients might feel in taking on a big transformation project. Yes. There's a lot there, but I hope I hit some
without a doubt
points.
And go-to-market is beyond just the sales. It really, that experience in the go-to-market that you're delivering runs through the entire journey. How do you connect those things together where you have that same experience in the sales and go-to-market process all the way through implementation and delivery and support, all the way through to renewal, and we just keep that relationship and that journey going?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I started sort of hearing the concept of go to market probably in the mid 2000s. Today we talk about revenue operations. Right. There's all these other new buzzwords that kind of aggregate what it really is. How do we attract someone or to want to buy our product or get involved with an assessment of what we do. The second is once we've qualified that, how do we take it through a sales motion, and how do we make sure that sales motion unearths what the requirements for the client is, and we can conduct the due diligence collectively to ensure that we end up in a purchasing cycle that ends in a contract cycle. And once we've had a contract cycle, how do we always evolve the relationship and support the relationship so the client continuously sees value. So those three elements alone to me is the customer journey, and within that customer journey there are hundreds of touch points across an organization that will either leave a really positive experience or leave a really poor experience along that way. And so I think when organizations start to think about how do we maintain that positive experience, I think we actually have to maintain a connected alignment between that entire journey internally. This might be a little bit controversial when I say this, but I internally, when I would be working with go-to-market teams, I would say, marketing is the servant of sales. Right? Marketing's core job is to ensure that top of funnel is filled, and top of funnel is filled with the right leads. And this is probably where I use the word servant. It's probably not relevant anymore, but what I mean by that is the sales strategy should drive the marketing strategy, right? Not the other way around. And I've seen far too many times that marketers go out independently, rightfully and respectfully go out there to kind of try to drive business and meet all the metrics that marketing teams are judged upon, to just fill the pipe with whatever we can get in the top of the pipe. But if you've got a marketing and a sales team that are deeply connected, and the sales strategy is well understood, here's the This is the geographies we're in. Here's the markets we'll be successful in. Here's the buyers who will buy our product. That should then drive the way that marketing uses their omni-channel marketing capabilities to drive the right leads to the top of the funnel. So that's, for me, probably one of the first things that I think organizations should think about doing. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are nodding saying we do that, but as you grow and you scale, I can assure you that the divergence between sales and
100%.
marketing gap grows. So trying to keep that connected even while you grow is really important, because continuous growth that you experience while you were connected won't be the same. Right. So, and whether or not you do that at a macro global level or you do it at a regional level, you just got to keep that connected tissue, because sales strategy drives the marketing initiatives.
It's really good. You're right, because when you're small, sales and marketing, you probably have two people that are working kind of hand in hand together. But as the organization grows, then those things become siloed. And marketing is really worried about protecting their turf and making sure that there's lots of things in the top of the funnel, qualified or not, and sales is trying to close deals, and so there becomes friction between the two if you don't have that alignment. But you're exactly right. I mean, there has to be a sales plan, and sales has to say, here's what we're doing, here's the goal, here's the quota, here's our revenue number. Now, what do we need from marketing in order to hit that? And so it's really that collaboration together, so that their goals are aligned, not separate.
And that will. Yeah, and Jeff, that will change depending on where you are in your
Yes.
Company life cycle. You mentioned, for example, a couple of companies that I work for. Some of those were new entrants into the Australian New Zealand market down here, and so the sales strategy that we were driving out was all brand recognition. So when we sat down and built our sales strategy around being a new entrant in the market, we said, well, here are the 5 personas that are going to be interested in buying our product. What we're not going to do is go and tell them why our product's so great. What we're going to do is we're going to use a certain amount of channels that we're going to go after to promote very, very targeted persona messaging around what our product brings to the industry that they're in. And so that's just one example of the sales strategy, because what we were trying to do then was, our sales strategy was not necessarily to fill top of funnel at that point in time, but it was to get conversations going with 1,000 organizations that we had chosen, and 4 persona types within each of those organizations. We just wanted to get conversations underway. So that's just one little example where marketing then went and initialized that, went into the particular channels we wanted to be in, developed the content specific to those roles and those personas. And that's one example of marketing and sales working really well when you're a new entrant into it. As you move forward and you become, you get better product market fit and more awareness, well, that changes again, right? Then you start moving in, your sales teams grow, and you might be building in industry models. You might be working in banking and finance, or heavy machinery, or farming and rural, or mining. All of a sudden, then marketing actually has to work closely with sales to understand how we're participating marketing in those industries. And again, how are we targeting those industries? What are the channels they're in? What's the content we need to create? What's the frequency of the campaigns we need to put in? And, I get that measures that are important to marketing are very important. I've had lost count of the amount of times I've sat in marketing meetings in a week going through spreadsheet after spreadsheet of attribution and a million other things that are important to marketers. I'd usually just move to the one thing that was really how many leads did we create? But moving to that customer service and support piece, I think that's a really, really interesting one, because often organizations think their job is done. The sales organization think their job is done once they've sold the deal. So once they've, got the quota retirement, picked up the commission check, whatever it might be, and looking to the next month, the next quarter. I think organizations that can create, again, that additional connected tissue between the account or the sales team that were involved in helping the customer make a positive decision to acquire, to remain involved to a certain extent, but also there to continue to help grow the customer. We've seen the advent of what we call customer success now inside software companies, which is, somewhere between an account manager and a technical account manager or a functional account manager. We've seen obviously the traditional support centres, which are now omni-channel driven through chat, email, phone, self-help, self-orientation with machine learning and AI now. We're seeing all sorts of complex ways that organisations have a way to try and engage with a customer through their post go live environment. But keeping that sales business connected to that can be challenging. But you can produce integrated models. One of the software companies we work with does it particularly well between what they call their growth specialists, their customer success, and their renewals team. There's incentives there. There's connected ways that they work, and they also connect in their partner community there. But that's a tricky one because it's not as linear as kind of getting a lead, running a sales cycle. Once someone goes live, usually got a unique, customized environment that's unique to them. Their support requirements are unique, and staying on top of that while a sales team is still trying to sell can be a challenge.
Last time we talked, you mentioned the symbolism of trophies in relation to brand and customer satisfaction, and people leaving their mark. You talked about their fingerprints on the trophy. How do they leave a mark on the trophy and customer success and ensure lasting customer satisfaction where there's that delight? They're creating raving fans ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for raising that. This is almost a cultural thing for me, probably not a procedural thing. I can remember whether or not, whatever sport you're into, whether or not you follow soccer or football, as they call it in the Northern Hemisphere, or you're following the NFL, or you're following the NBA, or you're down here in Australia, following an Aussie rules team or something. When that grand final is all said and done, and they're standing on the podium holding up the trophy, the symbolism of watching every player, every coaching staff, every person who's been involved in that success, trying to reach up with their hand on the trophy, is something that I feel that symbolises to me around what it means to be a collegiate team that understands the end state and the end goal. For me, the trophy is the customer. It always has been. The trophy is not we grew by 30% and we grew by 40%. The trophy is always the customer, and we should be reaching to leave a fingerprint on that trophy or that customer that is there, indelible and individual to you, that symbolises that the customer got what they wanted. But going down to before that, one of the things I would say to my team all the time is everything we do with a customer leaves a individual fingerprint. What fingerprint do you want to leave on your engagement that you have? Whether or not you're a marketer, or you're taking an inbound support call, you're a renewal manager, or you're someone in accounts receivable chasing some payments for some subscriptions that are outstanding, right? So, what fingerprint do you want to leave? Because that fingerprint is about every other fingerprint that we leave along the way as a team, which is that all reaching to put that single fingerprint on the trophy. There's an interesting. There's a sporting team down here in Australia, and they have a dynasty of winning what we call premierships. And I've actually been to their club, and you walk in, and all the trophies that they've won are there, and none of them have been cleaned.
That's great.
Every one of those trophies has been put into the cabinet, and you can see the fingerprints all over it. Every one of them. And I loved it, and that's where the symbolism came in for me, right?
That's right. That's right. And it's important that the teams feel that connectedness. And I love that the trophy is the customer. You're really, elevating them and leaving that imprint. And I know that, our client success team, when they get a compliment or they say, this has been such a great experience. I mean, that is just for them one of the greatest things they can hear, that, they've left their fingerprint, on that system, on that customer, on that team, and made a difference. And that impact is such a driver. Very cool.
Yeah, and how do you, this is a tough one for leadership, particularly in high growth SaaS companies or scaling SaaS companies, where sometimes, depending on what's important to you as a business, often and having sat inside these companies for a long time, it's very easy to just get distracted by making the number. It's very easy to just, because, gone are the days where, you'd set someone an annual target. And, I remember the days when I had sales teams that had annual targets and you'd kind of monitor it along the way, but like it wasn't this hard. You've got to hit this monthly MRR number or this quarterly MRR number. And sometimes because of the nature of software companies getting very, very focused on MRR, monthly recurring revenue, it's very easy to forget that there's that money comes from someone paying you or putting faith in your platform to help their business run better or be more efficient or create better connected experiences within their own organization, or take cost out, or create efficiency, or create a better experience for their customers. And I think this is the challenge with keeping, particularly in high growth, high scale SaaS companies, keeping connected to that trophy, to that customer, that is the end goal ultimately. And if you focus on that and you put behaviors in place and drive people around the values of focusing on that trophy, I do believe you see a different outcome on your balance sheet and a different performance in terms of your numbers. But if your numbers are the only thing that matters, I think your numbers will go down.
And you mentioned metrics before related to marketing and in sales as well, not just hitting that revenue number, but really connecting those customers to real outcomes. And both of those are important. How do companies balance those two things and build a strong value system?
Yeah, numbers and metrics are always going to be a core part of running a business. You can't,
Sure.
If you can't measure it, you can't drive towards it. So, every part of your business needs measures. So whether or not it's in finance and it's debtor days outstanding, or whatever it might be, or whether or not it's in sales and it's average sales cycle, or average revenue by deal, or whether or not it's in marketing and it's how many website conversions, attributions are we getting, it's or click-throughs to data points, or how many forms are getting completed through a click-through for an inquiry. It's important because it builds a picture of telling you how successfully you're running your business, right? So I do think you have to be able to measure it, and you actually but look at the core relationships between what you're trying to do. So if you are looking at website conversions coming in for MQLs or marketing qualified leads, what is the conversion from MQL to SQL? Sales qualified lead that it actually ends up being and then what is the conversion between an SQL and the velocity through your pipeline to closure? So I do think you have to measure it. I think that what is important though, and it'll change a little bit depending on which business unit you're in, and I'm not talking about trying to silo things again, but everyone has a different set of accountabilities to deliver towards those metrics. I think if I just target it on the sales side of things for a brief moment, I think the important thing for the sales teams is to not get too wound up in the metric that probably individually drives them the most, which is, what does my quota look like for the month or the quarter, and how do I retire that? Because if I retire that, I keep my job. What I would always say to sales teams is focus on the execution. Just focus on the execution. If you have a strategy for how you're going to run that sales cycle, and then you execute well against that, and you focus on putting a high level of quality, and you focus on the customer's needs ahead of your own, there's every chance that you're going to kill your number anyway. But if you get focused on just trying to actually drive it through to looking at a pipeline and trying to convince your sales manager that you've got pipeline velocity and you're moving a deal through a sales cycle, that's a false positive, right? You're better off actually having it stuck in a section where you're putting more focus and effort in that will speed it up later down the sales engagement cycle. But that for me is like what it comes down to, I think, Jeff. Focus on the execution, focus on doing things well and doing things right. And just the old adage, use your time well, don't waste time. It's the one commodity that we all have the same equal amount of every time we wake up. But how you use that, particularly in a sales sense, is really important because you do not get time back.
That's really, really good. Well, as companies grow, a lot of times there are transitions. And you talked a little bit about that at the beginning in some of the bigger companies, but that's true, with small companies to grow into big companies. A lot of them will start maybe with one go-to-market strategy or one market, and then that shifts over time. What have you seen that has worked well, and what are the pitfalls?
I think a traditional SaaS company, and I'll probably caveat this with a SaaS company probably operating in the B2B.
100% of our audience is B2B. So
most B2B. Okay, well, that's good to know. So I'll everything will be B2B from here on in. But I think what I've traditionally seen is as you come in as a SaaS B2B company, you're probably playing with more of a horizontal approach because you're trying to consume market in a certain way. And if you go horizontal, it's a bigger addressable market. That's the first thing. And you usually start with quite a low touch, low friction assessment and acquisition program for your customer. And that's usually kind of targeted in the SME space. And that seems to be a fairly typical journey when you bring a product into the market. The challenge, I think, as you start to acquire and get more market share in the SME space is how do you transition into perhaps as your product gets more mature, as well, because if you're always putting R&D back into your product, you're improving it and you're releasing new functionality that makes it more extensible for other industries or other segments to acquire it. As that acquisition cycle goes more up market into the mid-market or components in the mid-market and then potentially up into the enterprise or corporate space, the buying motion and the persona interactions are going to change. And so some of the challenges I've been part of and I still witness today with some of the software partners we work with is transitioning from that kind of low friction, low touch SME acquisition cycle into readying your business and preparing your business for a different engagement as you go more up market. And that's challenging because it's a process thing, it's a people thing, it's a marketing thing, it's a transition in thinking of sales cycle mentality in terms of average sales cycles and things like that. So I think as organizations that go up market from SME into mid-market and potentially higher, always think about transitioning the way that you sell to those buyers because it will be different. And if you maintain the same expectations for how you were selling in the SME, it's only going to end up in frustration.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of times they're not built the same way.
And maybe one or two little tips.
As a lot of times they're not built the same way. They don't have the right people, the processes, and just to make that shift, they think we're going to move up market and go after something different. But the same strategies don't work there, and they just haven't put the processes in place to make that leap.
Yeah, and I think where the greatest tension exists in that if organisations are going up market, at least and I don't think from my experience I've seen it any different whether or not it's the North American market, it's the Asian or APAC market. The same things still elevate as tension points. I think the main tension points that I see usually is your sales cycles are just longer and you have to invest more time. And that puts strain on the forecasting, it puts strain on the sales folk who are used to probably being able to accurately deliver it on a monthly MRR number. All of a sudden the sales cycles are not 2 weeks or 30 days, the sales cycles are 120 days. So balancing, a book of business to be able to hit a quarterly number or a monthly number when you're going up market as an individual or as an organisation becomes challenging. So there's a reset there in terms of how you balance that. And you're right. You're absolutely right. The other tension is that the way what you're required to do from a marketing and a sales content perspective, and managing that sales motion is
client acquisition costs would be very different, and even just the time to revenue, because if the sales cycle is stretched out, 90, 120 days, then you've got implementation time and the first billing and really hitting revenue is. Could be 6 months from the time it comes into the pipeline, which is very different.
Yeah, and the sales cycles are an interesting one because often as you go into larger organisations to destabilise an existing platform or platforms and transition a client off that, the risk barometer is greater than it is for an SME. And some people might find that odd because the SME's probably got a lower balance sheet, or it's got more at risk because it's an owner who's putting their livelihood on the line for acquisition of a platform. In reality, the risk is actually higher for the further you go up market, because the platforms that they have in place are usually so well ingrained, and they're so mature, and they're so customized, and they're more broadly deployed. They mightn't just be a local, it might be a global deployment. So unpacking that and decommissioning that and putting a whole new platform in is a really, 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 really tough step. And often the internal machinations for getting approval are very complex too. So as a vendor or a SaaS company working in that environment, you have to work extra hard. To your point, the cost of sale is really high, and managing your risk all of a sudden becomes a really, really big thing to address in your sales cycle. And how you diminish risk is multi-layered, but often at the end of the day, one of the things I also see that is not always front of mind for software companies or SaaS companies who are playing that mid and upper enterprise market is, you're also selling, risk is also about selling the certainty of the implementation, not just the capability of the product. The client can evaluate very quickly whether or not the product's got the capabilities to do what you want to do. How configurable is it? What's the functionality? Like, they can do that. They can see a demo. They can whatever. Where the risk barometer goes through the roof is at some point they're going to sign a subscription agreement, and they're going to hand the responsibility of that across to an implementation team or an implementation partner. And I would say it's very important when you're playing in that risk and transformation program, don't underestimate the importance of selling the implementation and how that's going to work, right? Not just here's our methodology. Get down to the kernel of what the project's going to look like. Who are the people on it? How are we going to approach it? Are we going to start with this? Are we going to phase it? But give the client high levels of certainty that they can sell internally. That yes, the product can do it, but we're going to be able to get to this go live point by this date, by this budget.
So important. Is they're really making the decision that's really scary, not necessarily from a technology perspective. Because you're right, they can look at the demo and as long as it works like that, then we're probably fine. But it's really in that implementation, and is it going to deliver the results, and what is that experience going to be like? How much pain is there going to be in that transition? And that's a really scary place to be, especially if somebody's making a decision. A lot of times it's not one person anymore; it's a committee. But, nobody wants to stick their neck out unless they have that certainty. And that's really what we're asking them to do is, hey, trust us.
Right.
Trust us that we're going to get this right and make you look good in the process.
Yeah. And look, harness, for the audience on this one who might be heading into that mid-market or trying to sell up market, if you do have an implementation channel, harness your channel partner, because they bring a really, really different sense of certainty and risk reduction in the conversation. Because at the end of the day, if you're dealing with a mature buyer, they know that the buck will stop between the implementation team and their implementation team and their capabilities to transition off an existing platform, build a new one, do all the data migration, all the new integrations that need to be required, manage change management through that, ensure that we get a day one production environment that we promised we would get. Use your partners to help diminish that risk, because there is a high level, at least in our region down here, buyers know that the vendor just wants to get this subscription agreement signed. And once it's signed, well, that's done. You're getting invoiced, right? But it's not done for the client because the client hasn't actually implemented yet. And so use your external partners to be that risk reduction player, but also elevate credibility that you've got them there early, so the client knows who's going to be on point to working with them to ensure that
that's
that they
important.
get an outcome.
In that handoff, they never meet a stranger. That their handoff is really smooth. It just kind of goes back to what you're saying, just that through point, the straight through motion. Every time that there's a transition point, from selling all the way through go live and support, they never meet a stranger. It's a very smooth process all the way through. That journey is is connected.
And that does get challenging while companies grow. But I do think, I like the saying "never meet a stranger," because I do think that the sales team will step away, right? And then there'll be some kind of handoff to a customer success manager or whatever. That's fine. That's a natural rhythm inside a software company. But that services relationship never ends. Yeah.
When we talk about customer journey and high touch and not meeting strangers, then take the other side. We've got a lot of technology and new things happening. How do you see AI playing a role in enhancing enterprise competitiveness, specifically in the mid-market?
Look, I think this is still all unpacking. I was in traveling recently, and I had the opportunity to catch up with some pretty senior leaders in the AI space, sitting across Microsoft and Google in particular, and the rate of change and the rate of speed of how this is coming at us is, as an organisation assessing how do I use this, or an organisation looking at what does it mean to me, it's kind of scary as to where you start, right? But I do think there are some very, very basic places people can start. I mean, things like just daily productivity tools that are helping enhance the way that we work, whether or not it's working across some of the AI frameworks that Microsoft is releasing across their desktop, whether or not it's across the work productivity framework of email, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams in particular. There's some just really, really early entrance points where you can harness AI to really, really increase efficiency and effectively in how you just work daily. From an application standpoint and how we're seeing that create pervasiveness, I think that's all still playing out. I mean, we're seeing, marketing tools now that are self-orientating around building landing pages and building content and building email templates based on almost going through a chat GPT session. You're seeing content being created automatically based on customer inquiries now. That someone puts an inquiry into you, AI sitting in the background, sitting on top of a number of other frameworks, personalizing and outbounding information back to the client and putting a journey in place for them. So there's a lot of things going on. But one thing I would say is that if you're not experimenting with it, you should be. Number one, even if it's just from a productivity standpoint, individually or for your teams. I think we're going to see. I almost feel like we're going to see almost like the .com boom issue again, where we're just going to see so many new products coming out that are built on top of AI frameworks. And I think it's going to be very noisy for a long time as to which of those are ones that are good, bad, or indifferent. But like every other day, I see a new AI product being released built on either a single or multiple AI platforms. But it's certainly having its impact right now. Some of the CRM and sales tools you're seeing out there right now are aggregating, video conferences like this and actually creating next best steps, building the profile of themes that came out of that conversation. Even we're seeing it in HR tools now, where performance reviews are being recorded, and at the end of it, it's actually telling you, what the employee understood or didn't understand, creating follow-up conversations. It's starting to really, really get pervasive in that voice and video analytics, AI assessment, and pulling that together. But look, I think get on board, experiment with it, but also maybe a little bit of caution around. I think the amount of tools we're going to see coming out and how they're going to fit.
That's really good. Well, where can people learn more about you and about BAC online?
BAC.co is our website, and BAC is an organisation that specialises in taking other companies through end-to-end go-to-market transformation, both in terms of process and technology. I'm on LinkedIn, Rod Moynihan. You can find me there. Or, as I said, our website, bac.co. But we've been helping companies in region and globally rethink the way that they go to market in terms of integrated marketing, sales, customer service support, and connected to their revenue operations backgrounds. From a procedural rethink and then a process rethink, and then obviously we then work with a handful of software companies to bring that to life and harness their legacy or sweat the assets they have today.
Well, thanks for being on SaaS Fuel. It's a great conversation.
My pleasure, Jeff. I hope there was some value in it for everyone.
Thanks again, Rod, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about Rod and BAC Partners at bac.co. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Thought leaders share, even out here in the land of coconut trees. So share this episode with someone who doesn't play at the surface level but appreciates deeper insights. Everyone who shares this week gets some Fiji fortune fronds. How about that? These enchanted palm leaves sway to reveal hidden sales opportunities. Simply shake the tree and let a tropical breeze guide your next big win. You can ask your reps if their new pipeline opportunities fell out of a coconut tree. No annoying laugh required. If you know, you know. Join us Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, where my guest is Eric Mersch, CFO at 2 public companies and over 40 SaaS companies as a fractional CEO. He's the author of Hacking SaaS, an insider's guide to hacking software business success. And the next Tuesday, we have founder Kirk Marple, CEO of Graphlet. We'll talk about revolutionizing unstructured data with APIs. What if unstructured data was just as easy to manage and mine as the structured stuff we're used to? So I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.